Hi, my name is Mandy Smith. I'm an educator with the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission. I work in the Southwest region out of the Somerset office. And today we're going to talk all about fish. We will talk about what makes fish fish, so things that all fish have in common, and some things that are different from fish to other types of animals. And we'll talk about some differences amongst fish and adaptations that make them different, okay? We have a lot of water in Pennsylvania. We have over 85,000 miles of rivers and creeks and streams in our state, which is more than any other state except for Alaska. We also have over 4,000 ponds and lakes and reservoirs in Pennsylvania. And then in the northwest part of the state, we have access to one of the 5 Great Lakes, Lake Erie. And in the southeast, we have direct access to the Atlantic Ocean through the Delaware Bay. So with all that waterways, we also have a lot of different fish species. So we have at least 174 different types or species of fish in Pennsylvania. And that number can and does change and increase because we have at least 33 estuarine fish species that come into the state, mostly in the upper Delaware Bay, okay? So what makes a fish a fish? The first thing is that all fish are vertebrates. So all fish have a backbone, just like mammals and birds and reptiles and amphibians. We all have a backbone, and you can take a minute and reach back and feel your backbone back here, okay? The majority of our fish have a bony skeleton, just like we do, hard and bony. And I'm gonna show you here a picture of an X-ray of a sunfish, so you can actually see the fish's backbone. And if you look close, you can even see the rib cages coming off of the backbone, both at the top and at the bottom. So that's pretty neat. Now, we do have some fish that their bones are made of cartilage. So we have sharks and rays and skates and the jawless fish like hagfish, and some fish that we have here in Pennsylvania, the lamprey. So their skeleton is made of cartilage. So if you feel at the tip of your nose here and wiggle it, or at the tops of your ears and feel them, that's cartilage. It's a lot lighter, it's not as hard, it's more flexible. But by far, most fish do have a hard, bony skeleton. All fish are cold-blooded, or you can say a better term for that being ectothermic. So the body temperature of a fish will change depending on the temperature around it. So the word ecto means outside, and thermic means heat. So again, their body temperature will change depending on the temperature around them. This is the same for reptiles and amphibians as well. But we as people, as mammals, and the same with birds, you can say that we're warm-blooded. So our body temperature stays the same no matter what temperature it is outside, unless you're out, in the very cold for too long or out in the very hot weather for too long. And then if your body temperature goes too far up or too far down, then you're in trouble, and that will be hurtful for you. So we know pretty much our body temperature stays the same on the inside. Fish, their body temperature will change depending on the water temperature that they're in, okay? And then all fish live in water, and they have adaptations to help them to live in the water. First of all, they have gills to breathe. Unlike people, as mammals or birds or reptiles, they all have lungs. The fish get their oxygen not from the air, but from the water. And the gills are located, let's see, let me pick a nice fish for you. They're located back behind the cheekbone. You can see this curve here. There's a gill cover there. You can also call that an operculum, and underneath there, that's where the gills are found, okay? It's a hard bony plate that protects them, a lot like our ribs protect our lungs. Now the gills on the inside, if you were to see them, I'll show you a picture of some gills underneath that gill cover. I know it's hard to see, but they're kind of feathery. But I know what you can see is that they are red, and they have a lot of blood vessels in them, and that's what makes them that red color, okay? If you watch a fish in an aquarium, you'll notice that it opens and closes that gill cover all the time, or it opens and closes its mouth, and it's bringing water across its gills so that those gills can get oxygen out of the water. Okay. Now the gills are very sensitive, so if you are an angler and you catch a fish that you are not going to take home to eat, you're putting it back into the water, you want to make sure that you do not stick your fingers inside that gill cover, because that will really hurt the fish whenever you put it back. They may not even survive. They're just very delicate, as you can imagine, so stay away from the gills. Okay. Next, all fish have fins to move about in the water. Of course, they're using their muscles and they're using their bones, but the fins really help them to get through the water. And all the different types of fins that a fish has on it, they all serve a different purpose. Okay, so I'm gonna show you an example here. This is a nice big crappie fish, okay? And if you look, we have the pectoral fin up here, and its pelvic fins are there, okay? And both of those fins are used to help steer, to stop, and to hover in one place, okay? Up on top is the dorsal fin, and that fin helps the fish to balance. It keeps it from tipping over, as well as the anal fin down below also helps it to balance and stay upright in the water. And then finally we have the caudal fin, which is of course the tail fin here. And that is like the power fin for the fish. You know, it's gonna swing that tail, but move it back and forth from side to side, and that's what propels the fish through the water, right? Okay. The other thing that a fish has to help it live in the water, at least for bony fish, is they have an air bladder, or some people will call it a swim bladder, all right? So if we look on here, it's gonna be right here on the inside of the fish, and it helps the fish stay upright in the water and not sink down to the bottom, okay? And the way it works is they use it by bringing air into the bladder whenever the fish wants to go up, and they let the air out when it wants to go down, okay? The other thing that the air bladder does is that it helps to amplify sounds in the water to help the fish hear. And then there are some fish that actually will use the air bladder much the same way as we use our lungs, where they actually come up and stick their mouth out of the top of the water, and they'll take a gulp of air. Okay, so in Pennsylvania, we have gars that do that. They use their air bladder like lungs by taking a gulp of air. All right, so far we learned that fish are vertebrates, meaning they have a backbone, and they are ectothermic or cold-blooded, and they all live in water, so they all have fins to move about. They use gills to breathe, and they have an air bladder. Now, what does a fish have covering its body? Does it have feathers? No. Does it have fur? No. Does it have anything covering its body? Yes, most fish do. Most fish have scales. Some have hard bony plates on them. And the scales on a fish help to protect the fish, okay? And they overlap, much like the roof on a house. The shingles will overlap on top of each other. That's how the fins are as well. And they're covered by a mucus coating or slime coating, which sounds pretty gross, but it actually helps to protect the fish. It helps them from getting infections. It keeps them healthy. And it also helps them to swim through the water more easily. So again, this is something else that you can do if you're an angler and you're putting your fish back in the water to live another day after you catch it, is you want to protect that mucus coating on them. So if you're able to wet your hands before you handle the fish, that's going to help to keep that slime coating on the fish and not on your hands, so that whenever you put it back, it's going to help it to stay healthy. All right. Now the fish scales will vary in size in different fish. So some fish have a very large scales. A good example of that is the common carp. I'll show you a picture of a common carp. Did I get it here? Okay. So you can see that the scales are very big, and that acts like body armor. It gives it a lot of protection. But if you think of a person wearing body armor, they're well protected, but can they run very fast? No. Okay, so the large scales, a lot of protection, but the fish can't move real fast in the water. Okay. Now, some fish will have small scales, like trout. American eel is another type of fish that has really small scales. So not much protection there, but they can swim a lot faster through the water. Okay. An example, I said some fish have bony plates. In Pennsylvania, we have some sturgeon. I'll show you a picture of sturgeon. Okay, so they have 3 rows of these hard bony plates on their body running down. Okay, and that of course gives them a lot of body armor, gives them a lot of protection. Okay. Some fish actually do have no scales, and the catfish are an example of that. One advantage of that might be that it helps them to get oxygen through their skin, all right, without having those scales there. All right, the other thing that a fish has on its body besides its scales I wanted to tell you about is a lateral line. So it has this line running down. There we go. I'm going to hold up the sunfish again, the bluegill. And this, I think, is supposed to be the lateral line running here down its body. And it's a line of pores, okay? And those pores are openings of little tiny tubes that go into the body. And at the end of the tubes are little tiny hairs, okay, that are connected to nerves. So sound, it helps them, the lateral line helps them to hear sounds, to feel movement. So whenever there's movement or sound in the water, the vibrations, the sound waves that come off of that, we're going to come through the water and go into these pores and tickle those little hairs that tell the nerves, hey, I hear something, or I feel this movement in the water, okay? And all fish will have that lateral line. Sometimes you can see it real well on a fish, and sometimes it's hard to see. Okay. So those are all things that all fish have in common for the most part. You know, again, they're vertebrates. They live in the water, so they have gills, they have fins, they have air bladders. Covering their body, they have scales, and that scales have mucus on them that helps to protect them. All right, and then they have that lateral line to help them feel movements in the water. So let's talk about now what are some differences among different types of fish. So fish do have a lot of differences between them. Just like if you think about mammals and birds, they have things in common, but there are really, you know, a lot of differences between the different types of animals that they are. So the same goes for fish too. In Pennsylvania, we can group fish into 2 major types though. We can group them as either a spiny rayed fish or a soft rayed fish. And to tell the difference, you'll want to look at the dorsal fin of the fish. And we're going to come over here, I'll show you the differences on here. Okay. So this is an example of a spiny rayed fish. They're either going to have 2 dorsal fins or 1 dorsal fin that's split into 2, kind of like it is here on this smallmouth bass. And if you look there, you can see that there's these sharp spines sticking up on that first dorsal fin. And that's what makes them a spiny rayed fish. So the dorsal fin, in addition, if you remember, it's going to help them balance in the water. It'll also can give them some protection. So a spiny rayed fish can stick that dorsal fin straight up when something's coming around that wants to eat it, and it gives them protection from that. Okay, so obviously examples of the spiny rayed fish would be bass, it would be a perch, yellow perch, a walleye. Those are all spiny rayed fish in Pennsylvania. A soft rayed fish, examples would be your trout, a white sucker, a pickerel are all examples. So if you look at its dorsal fin here, there's no sharp spines. It is just a single dorsal fin. And sometimes they have a little fatty fin between the dorsal fin and the caudal fin called the adipose fin. And trout all have that adipose fin, as do catfish, if you look at them. Okay. Body shape is another thing that you can look at, the differences between fish, and it can help you when you're looking to identify what kind of fish you caught. Okay, I'll show this here. So a fish might be flattened, like round and flat shaped, like this here, the sunfish here, or a bluegill, where if you looked at them straight on, eye to eye, they're going to be flat from side to side, flattened. This is going to help them to wriggle through rocks and vegetation in the water. It can also help them hide from predators. It's harder to see them when they're flattened from side to side. Okay. It might be not flattened side to side, but flattened on the bottom, like the sculpin is there. Another example would be a catfish. So this is a good shape for animals, for fish that like to eat off of the bottom and hang out on the bottom. It helps them stay down there. Okay. You might have a fish that has a long streamlined body, like the muskellunge there. A trout, again, is another example of a torpedo shape. This helps them to move quickly in the water. And then we even have fish that have a shape like a snake there. So an American eel is an example of that. This also helps them to move and swim quickly in the water, especially for long distances. And the American eel needs that because they go to spawn all the way out into the Sargasso Sea. So they have a long migration journey to get to spawn. Okay. Another adaptation that different fish have can be barbels. All right, we sometimes call them whiskers. So on a catfish, they have really long barbels, which is how they get their name. Here's 2 different types of catfish there, and you can see these fleshy appendages by their mouth. They are not harmful, so a lot of people will think they're scared about that, the whiskers on a catfish, that they're going to hurt them or sting them. And that they don't do that. That actually is a sensory organ, helps them to smell food in the water. All right, some other fish also have that, but just not as long. So again, the common carp is an example. The bowfin is another type of fish that has shorter barbels around their mouth. Okay. Other characteristics that you can look at for fish. You can look at the type of the mouth that it has, okay? So does it have a sucker mouth where it's eating food, again, off the bottom and sucking it up? Does it have a duckbill mouth like our pike and muskellunge do, where their mouth is kind of long and flattened like the bill of a duck, only it's full of teeth. And it can really grasp its prey with that mouth like that. It can grab it and grasp it. You might have a mouth that has a longer lower lip on the bottom, and that's good for eating like little insects off of the water. Or if you're familiar with a largemouth bass, its mouth is really big, so it can really engulf its prey whenever it finds food to eat. Okay. You can look at the shape of the tail. That's another thing here. And I have, okay. So paying attention to the shape of the tail, you might have a round tail. It might be shaped like a fork or a crescent. So this is a crescent-shaped tail there, which is great for swimming long distances. The fork-shaped tails are also great for swimming, but they are also good at making quick moves in the water. And then the rounded tails are more built for slowly swimming. So those fish that don't look to swim very fast, they have more of a rounded tail to them. Okay. Another thing you can look at to tell the differences between fish are colorations on it. So does the fish have stripes? Do the stripes go up and down like on the bluegill here? You see the stripes going up and down. That helps them to hide in the vegetation. Does it have a stripe going lengthwise down its body? All right, like the largemouth bass does. Maybe it has some spots on it or some mottling like a lot of our trout do. This is a very colorful rainbow trout, but if you also look at our state fish, the brook trout or the brown trout, they all have these little spots and mottles on them. Maybe it's a darker color up on top or a darker color on bottom. All different types of colorations that you can look at when you're looking at different fish. Okay. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about is water temperature. So biologists can group fish with similar water temperature preferences into 3 different categories: cold water fish, cool water fish, or warm water fish. So this is a nice chart I'm going to hold up here showing cold water fishes, cool water fishes, and warm water fishes. And then there are transition waters in between those where the temperatures kind of overlap in between them. And there you can see some of the fish that prefer those different water temperatures. And again, this is helpful to, if you want to like to catch a certain kind of fish, to know what kind of habitat it lives in, what is its water temperature preferences, It can also help you whenever you catch a fish that you're not sure about and you are trying to figure it out. Well, this type of fish would live in warm water, this type of fish would not. Okay. So I hope that you liked learning about fish today. If you would like to learn more, we have a fantastic website, and you can get to it by going to www.fishandboat.com. Once you get to our website, if you scroll down, you'll see under the Learning Center, we have an activities and education portal. If you click on that, you'll see all different kinds of activities. We have coloring pages, we have activity sheets, puzzles, learn how to draw different fish, or just read more about different fish in general or certain kinds of fish if you like to go for trout fishing or for bass or for yellow perch. Whatever it is, you can learn more about it on our activities and education portal.